Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast Morning Market Roundup with Chip Nellinger. This is the Halloween edition of the Morning Market Roundup. And Chip, man, there's not a lot going on. Market's kind of down again, and we're seeing some pretty typical stuff that we've seen over the last, for the last 3 or 4 months here. So, kind of what's your take? You know, I'm watching harvest out here. We've been fortunate to have pretty good harvest days. Getting corn to dry down has been a little bit of an issue, but for the most part, it's been a pretty easy going harvest. Now you talk to some guys back home, back around in Kansas, where they've gotten 6 inches of rain for, I don't know, it seems like every other week they get a big rainstorm that comes through there. I got to think there's going to be some issues with planting wheat and missing that window. So what are you hearing out there, and what do you see happening?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. Out this part of Illinois, central Illinois, we're pretty well wrapped up. We've had a pretty good window here for 10 days or so. Further north, you get 60, 80 miles north of here, though, and there's still some, maybe 15, 20% of crops left. So they're working on that. We've had a little bit of rain off and on. It's kind of raining last night, and today it's got to rain on Halloween. So,
Right.
That's just an annual occurrence, or hail or sleet or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's not Halloween without, an uncomfortable, freezing cold, rainy night.
We might get a blizzard out here today still, so who knows?
So, we've kind of surpassed the 70% mark. So we're on the downhill slide of harvest, and I think the market's kind of on hold here. The bean market has kind of broke off the highs here. The recent highs can't seem to get much going. The more China news, this meeting coming up in November, if that doesn't produce anything, President Trump has said he's just going to go ahead and put tariffs on the rest of the basically everything. Anything that China sends to us is going to have a tariff on it. So that didn't do well for the bean market, and the bean market's kind of sold off. Wheat and corn, I think, are trying to stabilize. They've certainly not gone higher, but like you mentioned, this planting window is quickly closing. Even down south, they've had a lot of rain, and so they're late. I talked to a guy down in Kentucky yesterday afternoon. A lot of crop left there. They've had a bunch of rain. So wheat planting is definitely going to be an issue. The market doesn't seem to care much yet, and really we don't get those wheat acreage numbers till the January crop report anyway.
Right.
So it's going to be a while before we know those, and it just doesn't seem like it's affecting the wheat market yet, but undoubtedly there's going to be some acres that switch and go to something else, and maybe that's cotton. That's most likely cotton. Mm-hmm. that will go to, I would think, at this point. But again, this time of year, October, November, just trying to wrap harvest up. There's not much news. Next week we get the November crop report, so that'll kind of refocus the market on what are yields. Is corn going to keep going lower? Are bean yields going to go up? What do they do with world wheat numbers? That's going to be important. So we'll get some more of that. What is that next? It's the 8th. So yeah. What is that, Wednesday?
Wednesday, yep.
Until then, we might just slop around like we have been and try to get the rest of harvest wrapped up and bushels tucked away. Basis out here is starting to improve on corn. Beans is still horrible. So that's telling you one of two things, and you don't know yet which. For sure, one, harvest is starting to get wrapped up, and two, maybe there's not as big a crop as what maybe commercial grain buyers expected. I would argue that there's just a tremendous amount of storage that's been built the last 3 years and even the last 12 months. And I think that's affecting basis out here. I can't tell you how many, I bet we have 10 guys we work with that put bins up, in the last 6 months, to use for this fall, this harvest. So that's a change in the grain flow, and is starting to affect basis in a positive way, I think. So that's always a good sign. That means you're kind of on the downside of harvest, and maybe we can talk about some sort of a post-harvest bounce coming in corn, but it's going to take beans stabilizing to get that. So we've been talking about that for how long now? 6 months. That
A while, yeah.
The key to everything is the bean market here.
Yeah. All right, so let's with the China thing. All right, so how much left is the market have they sold off or bought based on the China thing? I mean, I think everyone's kind of used to having some big nugget come out of that deal and never materialize, or have a meeting but then they don't show up. I mean, do you think the market's really going to be affected if nothing comes out of the November 20th G20 meeting that they're supposed to sit down and hash something out?
I think a lot of it's in the market already. It won't do it any favors. I don't think we have to sell off a lot more because it's already there, right? They're not buying our beans. They've canceled beans. I mean, we've already traded that for months now. So yeah. I don't think it has to be super negative. It won't do us any favors. We could, maybe sell off 20 cents or something. But between now and say January, February, when Brazil and Argentina have beans to sell, we're pretty fairly priced. So that's going to keep a floor underneath of us. It doesn't mean we can't go 20, 30 cents lower, but we don't have to go $1 lower yet. The problem is if there's no progress and, Argentina, Brazil, I should say, is off to one of the best earliest starts of planting they've ever had. And so they come up with a monstrous crop there, and Argentina bounces back and, has a normal crop after last year's drought. All of a sudden, we got some issues come February, March, April, because then all the demand's going to go south. And so that's my fear is, if something doesn't happen quickly, say this winter, to give us a little more optimism, and there's no weather problems in South America by January, February, this bean market might have some real issues, going into next growing season here. So that's kind of a big picture deal. Right now, we don't probably have to go a lot lower because we're the cheapest source of beans in the world, and that's going to keep a little bit of a floor underneath of us. But big picture, hopefully, one of two things happen. We get a little better news on China and an agreement there, or a little weather blip, weather scare in Brazil would be nice to spark a little rally. As long as it's not us, right?
Right. Everybody wants a drought.
Say, as long as Illinois burns up
right.
and we get rain, it's fine. But
yep.
We got a big crop here. But if Brazil can just burn up, it'd be great.
It works good for everybody.
That's right.
November 8th report coming out. Is there any big signals that you're seeing? You talked about the basis thing. You talked about maybe perhaps you're starting to see the makings of a crop that wasn't as big as everybody thought. Any real projections there on that report as to what you think the analysts are looking for and how the market's going to react to that?
Yeah, I haven't seen the average estimates yet. Probably see those by the end of this week or Monday, I would think. But I would expect that unchanged, slightly lower corn yields. Beans are still a wide variance of opinions. I've thought all along they had Illinois too high, and they probably still do. And I think as you get deeper into harvest in Iowa, they're probably a little bit too high in Iowa. So I could see them coming down a bushel or two in corn. The issue is beans, because there's some really good bean yields out there. And if they go up in bean yields, it's going to take some of the friendliness away from corn if they do drop corn. So,
yeah.
They're tied at the hip right now. And unfortunately, wheat, it's going to be world. We got to start seeing those world numbers come down, which they should. Australia, there's been a couple private estimates out of Australia, one from their government that's well under where USDA is. So at least from an Australia perspective, they've likely got to come lower there, and that'll help. So they've got some real problems there. They've got some problems in Europe still. They had a horrible crop their last crop, and that drought isn't fixed yet. And so they're not really doing very well in the early part of their growing season on their wheat crop right now. So, that's a work in progress. It's early enough. You can't really project yields yet. Mm-hmm. But if that continues, that's, basically their second season of a drought. That's really something that could spark wheat. So you got some things here in corn and wheat. that longer term could be friendly, but and a little help from the bean market here with a trade agreement or at least some talks in the right direction.
Yeah.
And it would greatly help everyone's, outlook there.
Yeah. I haven't seen any news because I haven't really been looking for it either. But where are we at with the new NAFTA 2.0 here? I mean, I know Mexico's all in, and Canada still needed to get it ratified through their parliament or whatever. And I mean, have you heard anything more on that front?
No, I really haven't. Since the agreement has been a little bit quiet. My sense is it just takes time. I think that Mexico, I think it's a done deal, and business as usual. So Mexico continues to be a big buyer, and that was one big piece of the puzzle, right? We didn't want to mess that up because they're just such a massive buyer of a lot of our products. So I think that's a good thing. I haven't heard a lot of fresh news on that, but I think it's business as usual there.
Yeah. What's happened with the cattle market the first half of the week? Seems like they've been kind of here and there. The stock market's been playing a number on them.
Yeah, we traded the cash market better than expected last week. We got October cattle going off the board today, so it's been a little bit choppy there. The cattle market sold off a little bit yesterday. We're still just in this range we've been in. I think expectations for cash trade would be steady at worst, hopefully a touch better. And if you can see that, we ought to be able to take another leg up and, kind of extend the rally north of 120 on the December cattle. Hogs have been pretty choppy. Still this swine flu issue going on. If you get deeper into winter here, I think there's better things coming in hogs and certainly out into next summer. And it just doesn't seem like they have a handle yet on this swine fever issue. Yeah. And then just, about every 10 days you get a new story about, more problems there. So as long as that continues, you're going to have some buying interest on the breaks in hogs. Doesn't mean you'll go straight up, but I think that the livestock market probably is maybe the bright spot in ag right now, hogs and cattle both. And as you get into winter and spring, should be some better pricing opportunities for the livestock producer.
Yep.
It kind of goes hand in hand, or not hand in hand, but opposite. Grain prices down, cheap feed ingredients. It's good for the livestock guy, and vice versa. So right now, the row crop guy is kind of, got the pain, where the livestock guy is sitting better.
Right.
Been good in cattle for a while, and we had that big break in hogs, but there's some light at the end of the tunnel for the hog guy now too.
Yep. There's a lot of stuff there's a lot of volatility everywhere, whether it's in the commodity markets or even in the stock market. I mean, there's just every day is a massive swing. Every couple of days, it feels like the stock market takes a giant dump on the board there, and then it comes back the next day or so, or it might even come back in the same day. But there's a large amount of wide swinging volatility going on across the market.
There really is. I mean, right now as we speak, the last I checked before we got on here, stock market was up, I don't know, 200-300 points.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's been super volatile. You check that in a half hour, it might be back to unchanged or lower. So there's been a lot of volatility there. And eventually that could help commodities, as people pull some money out, get scared, or if you've had money in the stock market for the last 10 years, I mean, sure, we're 12% off the highs or whatever, but you've made a tremendous amount of money. And if you get a sense that maybe the big run's over, let's put some money to work somewhere else. Commodities are cheap and they're going to get a look. And, I think you're already starting to see that to some extent. You see money flow into commodities. Where are they going to put it? What's cheap? You've got corn, beans, wheat on multi-year lows, and corn under the cost of production. There was a story out yesterday. I mean, it just shouldn't be a lot of downside to things. And if the financial market volatility continues, that could end up being, a good thing and have some money flowing in to buy commodities, which will help put a little bit of a floor underneath this. But that's not a quick fix. That's usually that's a 2-3 month process of seeing that money move. It's just not an overnight deal.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. So a lot of stuff going on. Good time to start maybe thinking about a plan for 2019. And if you're working on that plan, need someone to come check that out. Chip, how would they do that if they want to have you come look over what they've done?
Yeah, the easiest way is just give us a call, 309-550-7213. You hit the nail on the head. We got to keep 2019 on the radar here. We had $9.50 beans a couple weeks ago for new crop, and I don't know, 405, 406 December 19 corn. So everybody's busy trying to get harvest wrapped up and field work and worried about this crop, and we got to keep, this next year's crop in the back of our mind too. So we'd be happy to chat with you, give you kind of a free overview, a free review if you want to call it that. Just give us a buzz. We'd be happy to chat.
Right on. And before we close it down, I got to say happy birthday to Regina Nargis. Today's her birthday, so she's, I think, 22 today. So congratulations, Gina.
22 again.
22 again. Keeps it ringing. So, all right, Chip. Well, that'll do it, buddy. We'll catch you Sunday, and we'll talk to you then, man.
Okay. Have a good rest of the week.
All right, we'll see you.
I see.